Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Today we're going to talk about all of the books I read in March, which March has been a crazy reading month for me due to me discovering Heated Rivalry and then diving deep into the rabbit hole that is primarily sports romances, but like in general just gay romances on Kindle Unlimited primarily, because that was the easiest way to just get more of that. And yeah, I discovered my love for romance books in March, and because of that I've read 27 individual books in March, and then I also read technically 6 more because I did read the Heated Rivalry series Game Changers twice in March because I loved it that much, so I had to read it twice directly. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make the reviews as concise as I can, because the problem is we don't want to be here an hour and a half, let's be honest, but there are a lot of books. I've never had this many reviews in 1 month, so I'm gonna try and just group series together and give you like a quick wrap up of the series and what I thought rating wise of like each individual book. But I'm not gonna go into as much detail as I normally would, because there's no way. These are just way too many books to go into detail for every one of them. I read 4 physical books from my physical TBR, which, you know, I did make some progress there, and then the rest are all ebooks. I did buy the Game Changer series completely, and then the rest are pretty much all from Kindle Unlimited. So if I don't say anything, probably you will see it on the covers if I put them up, if I can find them for all of the books. But yeah, so it's I hopefully I remember every book, but I have to say this is the most books I've ever read in 1 month since tracking my reading. I did have Kindle Unlimited a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, like quite a few years ago, and I was reading like a hell of a lot back then as well, but I wasn't tracking my reading back then, so we don't know how many I've read back then. So let's start with the first series, because the first book I actually read in March was Game Changers, the first one in the Game Changer series. Then I obviously read the other ones, which is Heated Rivalry, Common Goal, Tough Guy, Role Model, and The Long Game. Are all 6 of the books that are out so far, and then we have the 7th, which is Unrivaled, that is coming out next year in the summer, I think is the current goal, from Rachel Reed. They're all by Rachel Reed. Fantastic author. I love her books. Let's quickly talk about the ratings of the books. The first one, Game Changers, I gave 4 stars. Heated Rivalry was 5 stars. Common Goal was 3 stars. Tough Guy was 4 stars. Role Model was 5 stars, and The Long Game was 5 stars as well. Also, if I look in that direction, my PC is there and I have the list of the books there, so I can, have a little bit of notes what I thought. So yeah, if I'm looking there, I'm sorry, but it is a lot to remember. Yeah, so the Game Changer series is a series about hockey guys. We have pretty much every book has a different main character, except for The Long Game and Heated Rivalry. Those have Ilya and Shane as the main character. But all of the characters are connected throughout the series. They mainly revolve around 3 teams, going on to 4 in the last thing. But yeah, that is kind of what the series revolves around. The first book is about Kip and Scott. Scott is a hockey player for the New Yorkers. I don't know what their name is. I forgot. I have no idea about hockey. I have to say that, I think. So yeah, the first story is Kip and Scott's story, which is definitely one of the fastest stories. It takes place over a couple of months, and Kip works in a smoothie shop. Scott comes in one day, and then his hockey game gets better, and he falls in love with Kip. That is pretty much the first one. And then Scott is also the first hockey guy to come out as gay, because it plays in pretty much the real world, and there's a lot of homophobia in the hockey world, and there isn't an out and proud hockey player, and Scott is the first one to actually come out. Then we go to Heated Rivalry, which is the story of Shane and Ilya, who it plays out, I think, over 11 years in the first book. And they have a really, really slow falling in love story. They are pitched against each other as like these rivals. They get to know each other starting being 17 and then all the way up there. Lovely story. I love Shane and Ilya. Ilya is a Russian hockey player who comes over to America to play for, I forgot the name. He plays for one of the hockey teams. They're Boston, I think, for the Boston hockey team. And Shane plays for Montreal, and he is also from Canada. And they fall in love over a long time, and there's a lot of things happening, but we don't have time to go into everything. Then we have a common goal, which is the one that I loved the least because I just didn't connect with the guys as much as in the other books. But that one is about Eric and Kyle and has a little bit of like an age gap in there. Kyle is a bartender who bartends as the bar that Kip frequents, which is a New York gay bar, and Eric is a goalie, a lot older. He's freshly divorced, and they meet each other, and then Eric realizes that he isn't straight as he thought and starts like finding more about life and about himself, you know. But yeah, I'm not really a fan of age gap relationships or like big age gap relationships, so I didn't really connect with those guys, but the story was still nice. It's just not me not connecting with the characters. Then we have Tough Guy, which is, I thought was really cute, the difference between our two main characters. We have Ryan Price, who's like an enforcer, and he's like always like having to hit people and, you know, the big tough guy in the hockey game, which he doesn't really enjoy doing. And then he meets on a night out, oh, what is his name? Fabian, who is an aspiring musician, and they knew each other from back when they were both children because Ryan stayed with Fabian's family because his brother's also a hockey player, and then they meet back up and yeah, they develop a relationship between one another that has a lot of like they're pretty much like so different as they can be, but they fall in love. It's really cute, actually. The contrast between everything and the way that Ryan develops throughout the story, because I felt like it was really good to talk about like the darker sides of hockey, not with like being gay, but with what you have to do as a hockey player, and that you might not love your role in the game. And that was pretty much the main focus of Tough Guy. Then we have Role Model, which was one of my favorites, which is about Harris and Troy. And Troy was like a pretty big asshole. And then his friend Dallas gets outed as a rapist. And he's pretty much the only one that is like saying something against his friend, who is his ex-friend by then. And pretty much most of the hockey league is standing behind Dallas, and so Troy gets pushed into like a not so great team that Ilya's playing for at that point. Ilya's the character that is pretty much, I think, in every of the books. He might be the only character that pops up in every one. And yeah, when he comes to Ottawa, he meets Harris, who's the social media manager for the team, and Troy goes on a journey to learn that maybe it's not worth it to be an asshole. And he's pretty much an asshole just to hide that he's gay. So we're coming back to the homophobia in the hockey league. And yeah, it's a really cute story. It has a cute dog in there, and Harris is a really lovely person. His sisters and his family, they have like an apple farm where they make cider, and it's all really cozy, and yeah, it's a really cute story. And then the last book is the continuation of Shane and Ilya's story. Once Ilya changes to Ottawa, and yeah, it's pretty much starts directly after Heated Rivalry, and it is how everything continues with them and them coming out or having to come out, and all the drama that surrounds like being an out hockey player, and then them having like a charity which is really important to them. Like it's a really sad book. There's a lot of like depression talk and you know, how life can be, and that not everything is like this nice, easy thing for everyone. And yeah, it's a really sad book, but it was a really cute book as well. And yeah, I loved it, which is why I gave it 5 stars. So yeah, absolutely in love with that series. I read it twice and I would recommend it to everyone. I think it's a really cute, really nice, like it is angsty, but it isn't unnecessarily angsty. Like all of the miscommunication in all of those books is like kind of grounded in reality and something that could happen in real life. It's not this like unrealistic miscommunication that I feel like romance books often have, which is why I disliked them so long. So yeah. Then we're coming to the first physical book I read, and that is Menace by John Gwynne, which is fantasy, like a pretty like high fantasy book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I did like it, but I felt like it was a pretty slow beginning and I haven't connected to all of the characters yet, which I feel like is pretty important in fantasy. But other than that, it was an interesting story. It has a little bit of magic, not as much as I love in my fantasy, but it is there, and it is like a pretty like politics heavy, but also action heavy fantasy that pretty much talks about 3 characters and shows their life and what they're going through and changes in life, going through battles and growing up also. And yeah, all of that connected to the politics of the time. And there's also like a lot of mythology with like giants and humans and the gods and power struggles, you know, a pretty classic fantasy, I would say. So yeah, haven't yet connected to all of the characters, but we are getting there because it is a 4-parter. So it's a good start. It's a pretty solid start. Also, it's John Gwynne's first book, so we're gonna have to give them some slack because it's the first one. Then I read another Rachel Reed book, which is Time to Shine. This is one of her standalone hockey romances, and that is about Casey and Landon. Landon is a backup goalie for the team he was previously at. Landon is in the lower hockey league. I've forgotten what it's called. And he gets called up into the NHL because the backup goalie gets sick. And so he has to go in and be pretty much he's the backup goalie, pretty much. And so he gets called in. He's a loner, pretty heavy loner, and he meets Casey there, and Casey makes this his mission to learn more about Landon and be a friend to him, and then they kind of fall in love and they work together through their problems. And there are a lot of problems, especially on Landon's side, but Casey also has a little bit of trouble, and he enjoys having Landon as like a roommate, and it's pretty much Landon, like the quiet one who doesn't really want to shine, and then you have Casey who fills silence and emptiness in his life with being loud and being a friend and, you know, impressing everyone and always talking and stuff like that. It was a really good contrasting, like they have a good contrast, but they fit together in the end, you know. And yeah, that was a 4-star novel for me. Like the guys, it didn't reach Heated Rivalry, but you know, it was a good story. And then I read the last book by Rachel Reed because I fell in love with her writing, and that was The Shots You Take, which is about also 2 hockey players, but one of them like left hockey and his broken heart behind because they were roommates and friends, and yeah, they ended the friendship because of an incident, because Riley has feelings for his friend Adam, and Adam didn't return those feelings at the time. And yeah, so Riley turns his back to hockey. He's pretty heartbroken. He's back in his hometown, and then his father dies. And at that point, Adam comes to his hometown to actually be at the wake for the father, because he was kind of a part of the family because of their childhood. And Adam is pretty set on winning Riley back because he realized he actually has feelings for Riley, and he just never allowed himself to be okay with that. And he is still a hockey player, I think, at that point. And yeah, it's pretty much the whole novel is like a second chance novel. And I get why a lot of people don't like that, because Adam did hurt Riley pretty badly. But they were younger, and I don't know, I liked Adam and I liked Riley, so I was fine with them getting back together. But if you read the book, I can get why some people aren't all too happy with them ending back together. But yeah, I liked the story. I thought it was cute. Adam is like really, really trying to show Riley that he can be there for him, and that he realized that he wasn't like doing the greatest back then. So I gave that one 4 stars as well, because it wasn't heated rivalry. Let's be honest, I think it's hard. Like, I'm really, really looking forward to part 7, which is of Game Changers, which is Shane and story again, but I miss those characters. But yeah, those are all of the Rachel Reed reads now. So we did manage to get through those. Then, the next book I read physically, and that was Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Didiman, and that one was quite interesting. I gave it 4 stars. I did actually really enjoy the book. It is about aliens coming to Earth, pretty much flattening the planet, and then the humans that did survive are now participants in a game show that the aliens put on, and it is a dungeon crawl, and the humans have to get through it. And it's pretty much made up like a video game. That you have an inventory and a map in your head, and you know, it's pretty much what all of us think about when we are like, oh, I would love to be in a video game, you know? Only that you can die here for real. And then they have to get through the dungeon, and it's pretty much the beginning of the story, because this is a series. And I did enjoy the concept, but the one thing I had was that I'm not interested in continuing the story, because I just cannot imagine it continuing to be interesting. I like the concept, the boss fights, the meeting enemies, meeting friends, meeting people or strangers who might not be friends. You know, there was a lot of like action and funny stuff, and things I think you will only really appreciate if you do play video games. But it wasn't enough to get me to a point where I wanted more of it. So I gave it 4 stars because I did really think it's a good book, but I think it's missing this like spark where I actually want to continue with the story and learn more about Carl and Princess, I forgot what's her name again. Oh, Princess Donut, his ex's cat that he has with him, that is in the dungeon with him together, which can talk at some point. It's a funny book. I would recommend it. I just don't think I want to read more than one of this. And I think there are like 6 or something like that. Like, you can find them at the moment in every bookstore. And I cannot imagine wanting to read more of that. So I won't continue with that series, but yeah. I tried it and I liked the one. Then I went back to romance books and I read The Kennedy Rule by Casey Carmichael, which was also a 4-star read about hockey players. This one is a roommates to lovers, pretty much. Connor and Gavin, and they are both chosen to compete in the Olympics for the same team. And they are forced roommates, pretty much. And then they fall in love. It's a pretty, like, they fall in love pretty heavily. And the drama is more towards the end. A little bit of, like, homophobia, stuff like that. But they get, like, the team is for them and not against them. It's more like outside forces. But yeah, so it's kind of enemies to lovers. They don't really like each other in the beginning, because Connor is like the golden boy in hockey, and Gavin is like the coming from like a poorer upbringing and all of that. So it's pretty like opposites, you know. But they fall in love, and I find it cute. To be honest, I don't really have a lot to say about most of these romances. If you have like a cute, not too angsty romance where they don't break up in the middle, I seem to be all for it. Then I read a complete series, which is the Chicago Thunder series. It starts with trade deadline, then it's off-season, defensive zone, power forward, and rebound control. So 5 books in that series, and it is about one team where pretty much everybody seems to be gay. It also plays out in a world where homophobia in hockey isn't a thing, which I found to be a really nice change. Obviously, it's really unrealistic, but I thought it was a nice change to take that part of the story out, and we have more like personal problems and mental health as like a focus of the books, and for the guys to work through, and less of the world being against them because they are gay, you know, which I found was a nice exchange to the Game Changers series, because that one revolves mostly around the world being against gay hockey players. We have the first one is Blaine and Alex. Blaine is a hockey player, Alex works in a bakery, and they meet, and Blaine falls really hard for Alex. He was a player before, he wasn't even sure he's gay, and then he falls in love with Alex. Pretty cute. Then we have the second one is Ethan and Jacob. Jacob is Alex's brother, and Ethan is the key team captain. And Jacob doesn't really like athletes and hockey players because he has some really bad experiences with them, and then Ethan kind of shows him that there are nice ones out there, like Blaine as well, like his brother's partner. And yeah, then with Ethan and Jacob, the main part of the story is fake dating for a wedding, and then they kind of want to make it real. Then in part 3 we have Zach and Carter, which Zach is the hockey player and Carter is the football player. It might be American football, I'm still not sure. But yeah, they are best friends since they are 6 years old, and then Zach develops feelings for Carter, but Carter is like doesn't know, and he's dating around, and Zach is at some point like, I can't handle this anymore, and he breaks off their friendship, and then Carter is like trying to find out what happened, and once he finds out that Zach has feelings for him, he realizes that maybe what he thought was just a really intense friendship might be more than friendship, and that is where they are going. All of these books have 4 stars. I think I forgot to say that, but yeah, the whole series has 4 stars for me. Then we have the 4th book, which is Jackson and Hayden. Jackson is a hockey player, and Hayden is he a PR guy? Like he works for hockey players, and he used to play hockey, but he isn't anymore. Both of them are a little bit on the older side, and they had a thing back in the day, and it didn't end well, and then it's a second chance one with Jackson having 2 children and being divorced at that point. And then we have the last one, which is about Blaine's twin, Elliot, and Elliot falls in love with Hunter, a firefighter, when he sees him, and they have the problem that Elliot has ADHD, undiagnosed, and his life is pretty like chaotic, and he feels like a failure often. And Hunter actually is a widowed man whose partner died in a fire while he was deployed, and so yeah, there are problems on both sides with like going into relationships and doing things, and it was really cute. I think it's one of my favorites from the series, because Elliot is just really like innocent. He hasn't had a lot of experiences that were positive in his life, and so he reads a little bit younger than he is, but it feels really like for a reason, you know. It's not like he's childish, it's just that you realize that he hasn't had a lot of experiences, whereas Hunter is really jaded because of his job and because of what happened to his ex, and he has a lot of PTSD, and they handle each other really well. It's really cute. Then, after I finished that series, I read Love Actually, which is by Phoenix, also a hockey story. As you can tell, kind of did recommend me a lot of hockey. This is about Ace and Devon, and Ace is in college and works at a bar, and at the first night of his job, the hockey players come in to celebrate a win, and there's a fire, a small fire, but a fire nonetheless, and then a woman comes in who works for shelter, and she's like, the shelter needs to close. It's really sad in the beginning, and then the hockey players decide we want to help and want to do like charity things to get money for the animal shelter, and Ace kind of gets roped into this because the bar hosts all of those things, and the bar owner knows like the woman with the animal shelter, so they are all kind of connected. And yeah, Ace falls hard for Devon, and Devon realizes he might be gay, which seems to be a topic in a lot of these books. Really cute. I really liked Evan and Days. Devon and Ace gave it 4 stars. Then we read a physical book again. Sadly, this one wasn't good. This is Jitterbug by Gareth J. Powell. This is a space book where if you read it, you feel like you've read it already, even though you probably haven't. And that was really disappointing. We have a crew of the Jitterbug who are out in space and doing like contracts to like kind of like bounty hunters to get by. And they find a ship in space that has like an SOS beacon, and they get nearer and they realize that it's actually 2 ships that are dead, and they try to search for survivors, and they find this woman, and the woman has like some data in her that people want. Let's just say it like it is. And, you know, they have to then decide, oh, what are we doing and stuff like that. Which, just the way it plays out, I was so sure I read the book already, but it is a new release, so it was really, really weird. I didn't connect to the characters at all. They were really childish, even though all of them are adults. And they don't ever develop throughout the story. They pretty much stay the same. The most dramatic thing that happened is that one of them dies straight in the beginning of the book. You don't really have a connection to anyone at all. And there's so little happening in this book. And, you know, it just feels so much like you've already read it. So yeah, I felt really bad, but I gave it 2 stars because I would much rather read other sci-fi books that have a really similar story than this one, to be honest. And that was quite disappointing. But it happens, you know. Then I went back to the hockey romances. I mean, it's the last one for a while, so yeah. We have Changing the Game, which is the Offside Series 1 by J.J. Mulder, which I gave 3 stars. This is about a former college hockey player who breaks up with a girlfriend, lands in another team in the NHL, and he's kind of like, I need to put my head down, play good hockey, and just get through this. And then we have Troy, who is the star forward for the team, and yeah, they kind of fall in love, and Troy is like, I'm gonna be together with you. It was pretty like similar to a lot of the other stories, but not as great. I don't know. I would recommend all of the other ones before that one. But it was just 3 stars. It still wasn't a bad book. I did not log all of the bad books that I also tried to read. There were a lot of DNFs in March. Then I went outside of the hockey genre for romance stories, and I read Winter Wishes and Coffee Kisses, which is part 1 of the Love in Maplewood series by Anna Ashley. And this one we have 2 guys. I don't know what their names are. It's not in the blurb. But we have our main character who comes to Maplewood because he wants to open a coffee shop there. He does that, and then he meets his neighbor, who is a little bit of a grumpy woodsman. He works as an arborist, and he kind of falls in love with him, and then they both are pretty much like, oh, do we want a relationship, do we not? And then they have pros and cons and all of that, and in the end they fall in love. It was really cute. I like the coffee shop setting and getting back into like a community, because Maplewood is like this really small queer town, and yeah, getting into that community. And then we also get to know that our main character's mother was from Maplewood, and he doesn't have any other family. And then we have a little bit of like a found family trope, and then a reconnection with family members that our character wasn't aware that they exist, and a little bit of drama on that point. So yeah, it's a really cute found family, not insta-lovey, I would say. It's like one character falls for the other much faster, but like they do take some time till they take any steps to actually be in a relationship, you know. But yeah, that was really cute. I tried to read other books of the series, which I wasn't successful with, because they are all from different authors. So as much as I get writing series with like different people together, it was really irritating because I liked that writing style and the other ones didn't fit quite as well. Then I went and read Ranger, which is a story about PTSD. We have Ranger, but who is ex-military, who has PTSD because he lost some people. And he is out of, I don't know, some part of the military. And he's honorably discharged at that point, so a veteran. And he moves into this little house in the countryside, and then his brother was like, I know a guy who trains dogs for PTSD, and he gives him his contacts and is like, maybe it can help you. And then he falls in love with the guy who trains the dogs. It was a cute story. I gave it 3 stars because they had a rocky beginning, and I felt like the beginning was a little bit cringy. Just my personal opinion. But like, it got really a lot better towards the end, and it was really cute towards the end, but the beginning kind of, you know, I wouldn't read it again because the beginning was just awkward. Yeah, then I read a biker romance, which I'm still not totally sure if I love the genre or not, but I did love the novel. I gave it, I gave it 3 stars. And this one is about Caden and Lucas. Lucas is running away from an abusive relationship, and he comes to this biker bar. They take him on even though he doesn't have any experience working for a bar, and Caden kind of realizes he might not be straight and falls in love with Lucas, and then obviously the abuser comes back and the bikers have to defend him, kind of, but then actually this one ends with Lucas having a chance to helping himself, which I really liked. But yeah, I don't know. The straight to gay thing was like weirdly done in this one, and overall I don't like the violence in, like, I just don't like violence, to be honest. And in this one, the biker gang that Caden belongs to is like one that does a lot of illegal shit, so wasn't the biggest fan of that. But that is obviously opinion, you know. Then I read one about a tattoo studio, which I found really interesting. I gave it also 3 stars. It's Freehand, Iron and Works by Ian Lindsay. And this one we have Derek and Basil. Derek is a tattoo artist with PTSD. He has PTSD from his past being kind of abused, not kind of, he was abused by his parents. And then he meets Basil, who is deaf and who kind of doesn't really want to have anything to do with the hearing community, but then they end up with each other. The thing that mainly annoyed me with this one is that both are trying to date outside of their connection, even though both feel a connection. They're just denying it for themselves and try to date other people, and it's all really awkward and kind of off. And then we have the whole like PTSD thing, which comes up in the beginning but doesn't come up enough for my taste in the rest of the book. And then obviously we have Basil with his thoughts about not wanting to be part of the hearing community and having like a whole lot of opinions, which are, you know, a lot of them I could understand, but some of them I was also like, you know, not helpful. So I gave it 3 stars because I did really like Derek, but the rest was kind of iffy. But they end up together in the end, so, you know, it works out. After that, I read Until I Saw You by Diana Roman. This one I give 4 stars. It is about 2 guys, Harper Reed and Riley Davenport. And Riley lost his sight, and he was a developer before that. He made like apps. And Harper flees a domestic violence situation. He has an abusive boyfriend, and so he flees and gets a job with like this like it's an agency that matches people who need help with people who can help, kind of something like that. And Riley pretty much makes sure that everybody leaves sooner or later, and then Harper comes into his life and he's actually really helpful, and the two form a connection. and learn a lot about life from each other. And yeah, it was really cute. I really like the way that Riley evolves around the book, because in the beginning, it's not that long ago that he went blind from an accident. And so he's really like depressed and not doing great in the beginning, but Harper like really helps him through that and helps him help himself and actually give him like a life goal again. And then once like Riley is at a point where he's actually better, he manages to actually help Harper, because the abusive ex is still tormenting Harper. And so, you know, it's a little bit of like helping each other, and it was really cute. So I give it 4 stars. And then we have the last physical book I read, that is Gaslit, which was a YA thriller that was pretty obvious from the beginning. Like, in the first page, the perpetrator is on page. I knew it was the guy, which was kind of funny. But yeah, it's a YA thriller. I think if you are a lot younger, that book actually isn't bad. It's about Ella, who has a brain tumor and pretty heavy migraines because of that. So she misses the New Year's with her friends, but then her aunt calls and is like, can you look after my child? My boyfriend isn't feeling well. I would love to bring him a soup, so could you come and watch after your cousin? And Ella's like, yeah, my migraine is on the way out. I will come over. And once she comes over, she realizes something is wrong, and her cousins are lying on the floor, and her aunt is in her bedroom lying on the floor, and it smells like gas. So she manages to get her cousins out, but she can't save her aunt, and yeah, then she calls police and all of that, obviously. And the police is like, oh, it was a defective gas valve, it's like an accident, bad, but you know, something like that can happen. And Ella's like, no, something else happened here. And so she goes on and investigates with the help of a cousin, the older cousin, and a friend, and they then investigate. But yeah, the problem is it was pretty obvious who was the perpetrator from the beginning. But I feel like if you are a lot younger, like 15, maybe 14, 15, 16, I actually think it would be a good thriller for that age. But like, coming from my perspective, it wasn't the greatest, but I gave it 3 stars. I did still really like it. It's by Megan Davidizar. Still can't pronounce the name, really sorry. And then we are now at the last 2 books. I'm sorry this is taking forever. The second to last I read was Stormy, which I'm still really conflicted about. I reread the book in April, like this month already, but Stormy is like a gay romance about Tex and Stormy. And Tex owns a bar that his father owned before him, and he is on his way to pick up some stuff to board up the bar because a hurricane is coming through. And he sees this small little guy standing in the rain with his motorbike, and he's like, that guy needs help. And so he picks Stormy up. Stormy doesn't talk, he only nods and is like really afraid. And so he picks him up and brings him back to the bar, and they hunker down for the hurricane. And throughout the story, Tex realizes that Stormy was heavily abused, and he does learn the full truth later on. But like, just from the way Stormy behaves, Tex is like, okay, this guy is like in deep shit. But he falls in love with him anyway, and Stormy also falls in love with Tex, but he doesn't really trust anyone. And so we have the story like go over weeks of like the hurricane coming through and then building the bar back up and all of that, and both of them like kind of falling more in love and navigating the horrors that Stormy has lived through. And then the abuser comes back and tries to take Stormy with him, and Tex obviously wouldn't let him. So yeah, it's a pretty sad book. It's a really, really sad book. And that's the problem, you know, when I read a romance, I kind of want a happy-go-lucky romance. That is what I enjoy the most. But if I ignore that the book is a romance, it was a really, really insightful book. It's by Ren Wiles, if I haven't said so far. So yeah, I would actually really recommend the book because of the sad stuff in the book. And the romance is really cute. It's just that for me, it's mostly when I want to pick up a romance, it's to have a fluffy light read in the evening, you know? And Stormy is anything but a fluffy light read. It's a pretty dark and heavy book, and it ends in a lot of, like, still with a lot of violence that I'm still not the biggest fan of. So yeah, it was really hard. I gave it 4 stars because it is a really good book. I'm still thinking about maybe if it's worth the 5 stars. I don't know, because I'm so conflicted between what I want a romance to be and the thing that I did enjoy the book, like, really, really a lot. And yeah, I don't know, to be honest. But through a lot of the books, I realized that I really like the protector needing to be protected books. And so I read Shielding the Superstar, which is the Hard Security Part 2. Now, most of the romances are standalones, so they are readable standalone. This one I give 3 stars. It's by Jackie James. It's about Ryan Barnes and Colton Montgomery. Ryan is a bodyguard and works for a security firm that he has with his brothers. And Colton is a country star who comes out as gay. And he starts to get, like, weird gifts, and somebody comes into his apartment and leaves stuff there and stuff like that. And so his management is like, you need a bodyguard. Colton doesn't want a bodyguard, so he's like, okay, I only accept it if we are fake dating, so nobody knows I have a bodyguard. And so they start fake dating, and the fake dating turns into real dating. It was cute, but I don't know. At some points, I was debating if Ryan really is a bodyguard because he fucked up pretty hard at some points where I was like, it doesn't make any sense that you would fuck up this hard in this situation. But the romance part was cute, so, you know, what can you do? And it was pretty obvious who was the perpetrator, so that was also a little bit on the more lamer side. But yeah, those are all of the books that I have locked for the month. I kind of remember 1 or 2 more, but they might be in April. So yeah, those are all of the books I read. I'm really sorry that the video is so long, but I did want to review them all. So yeah, if you've read any of these, maybe leave your opinion down below. Obviously, a lot of them are kind of limited. I don't know how many people have read them, but yeah, I had a lot of fun this month. I have to say that, like, it was a lot of fun to read this much and just dive headfirst into a new genre and just, you know, learn about myself and what I like in reading, which I will do a separate video about my deep dive into romance. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week's video and the review of all of the books that I read, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!